Hey Siri, what's the temperature?
It's 46 degrees outside.
Are we still in Florida? Hey guys, what's up? I'm wearing a hoodie, so get over it. This is the Makina IIS. This has quickly become one of my favorite cameras simply because it gives me a lot of versatility with what I want to shoot and then also what format I want to shoot it in. My friend Chris referred to this as the Leica of medium format, simply because it's just an amazing camera and there's just a lot packed into a very compact body. The modern version of this that you're probably more familiar with is the Makina 6.7, which is of course similar to the Mamiya 6.7 and also things like the Fuji GW and GS, I believe. This specific body was built within 3 years of World War II. The reason I know that is from doing some research. I discovered that this red triangle here, after World War II, that was changed to a red circle, which is fairly common with most cameras today even. And then also up here on the top left is DRP, which after World War II, that was also changed. The prequel to this camera is the Makina 2 and then the Makina 1. The first Makina didn't offer the interchangeable lens system that this one does. I believe the Makina 2 did. The shutter was built right into the plate along with the lens, so you didn't have that option. The differences between this and the Makina 3 is that the shutter speed now went up to 1/400th of a second, and then also you had a flash sync built into the front plate here. From what I can gather, there's only a few different lenses built for this camera system, somewhere in the range of 4 to 5 lenses, I think, with a few different variations depending on years. I have on here right now the Anti-Komar 2.9, and then also I have the telephoto lens, which I haven't been able to use. It's a little bit beyond my repair level as far as skill and just the tools I have available to me. I want to make sure I get it done properly. I actually read a review on the lens I have on here right now. Let me just read that to you. Let's see. The Anti-Komar 2.9 is probably the worst lens they could have made for such a great camera. Awesome. Behind the board you have the Compor shutter, which is built into it. Then you have the lever here to cock the shutter on the left-hand side, and the shutter release is up here on the top right. This knob here is what you would use to focus. It's a screw-on lens, so you would just take this off and put on whatever lens you wanted to. As far as focusing goes, it's a very interesting setup and workaround that they did for this. So just behind the lens plate, you have 2 notches. So for this lens and the telephoto lens, you would extend it to the furthest notch, and it kind of snaps into place. And you would adjust your focus by looking through the rangefinder, set it, and then once you're set it, of course, fire it and you're good to go. With the wide angle lens, it's a little bit trickier. What you do is you set it to the furthest notch. Then, as usual, you look through the rangefinder, pick your focus, set it. Once you've done that, there's 2 plates behind this lens board. And on the furthest notch, you're gonna look at that number. So for me, it says 1.5 is my focus distance. So now, what I would do is adjust this to the further back notch, and now there's another plate over here with focusing distances as well. So now I'm gonna set that to 1.5, and now my wide angle lens is in focus. I can pick it back up and compose my shot. It's a little different, but it is a very interesting and kind of a creative way of how they came up with a solution to that. As you just saw, to compose your shot, you have this system of screens here. These lines help you with the different framing options you have based upon the film stock you choose, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then also on the back viewfinder here, you also have another distance focusing to help you compensate your shot with the distance that you choose. And then also to add to that, you have these metal plates, which you put on here to further help compose your shot. And I have not dabbled into the use of these yet. I think it might actually be with the lenses. This might actually be for the telephoto lens since it's so small, and this might be for the lens that I'm currently using. Then that doesn't make sense because it's landscape and not portrait. Now for the rangefinder part of this camera, it is a very small eyepiece. As you can see, I would probably compare it to the Leica viewfinder that everyone hates, although I think it might be slightly bigger. However, as I was using it and composing my shots, I was actually surprised at how easy it was to nail my focus. The focus patch on it is surprisingly very crisp and accurate, despite what I thought it would be given how small it is. So focusing actually went much smoother than I anticipated. Now we'll go over our different film options. So I have the 120 backing that comes with this camera. Unlike the RB67 backing where you can just put it on and latch it in place, this does have to slide into place and then it latches on the side. There is a dark slide that you can pull in and out of the backing. And as you can see, that's a pretty big negative for shooting in this medium format rangefinder. On the bottom of the film backing, you have your shot count here, and then your film advance is right next to it. So traditionally with something like a Rolleicord, Rolleiflex, or anything that's square format, you get 12 shots out of a roll of 120 film. Something a little bit bigger like an RB, RZ67, you get 10 shots. With the Makina, you get 8. So if shooting medium format wasn't already expensive enough, but the countdown here, actually it has notches on each of those 8 shots, which allows you to advance and it'll latch into place once you get to 8. However, if you notice, there are half notches in between each of those. The 120 backing that I have comes with this little plate here. And what this does is it turns that basically into a half frame. So now instead of 8 shots, you get 16. Das ist sehr gut, ja? I haven't used this yet, but it is definitely on my list of to-dos. Now, if you decide you don't want to shoot 120 film, you do have the option to shoot sheet film. The package that I got came with 6 different holders for sheet film, and I believe there is still film in these. I haven't dabbled into whether or not they need to be developed. I think they're all old. I don't think they were ever shot. I think they've just corroded over time. And then also you have a bigger one here for multiple slides as well. It's got the Makina insignia on the back, and then your dark slide again, just like all the others. But just that leather and everything, it just looks great. Now this is medium format, this is a rangefinder camera, and you do have the option to mount this on a tripod. There is a mount here on the bottom, and when you're doing that, you might want something like a ground glass for shooting landscapes, which this also came with. It's got a few cracks on the side. Ugh, that's kind of gross. I should probably clean this. So yeah, another great option here. You have to slide in your ground glass to compose your shot before switching to some sheet film. And then you just have your standard backing for the camera. If you're not using any film, again, the nice insignia. It's got all your stats and numbers on the back of it there, which is really cool. Okay, so now that I'm sitting here editing this, I just want to talk about a few things that I failed to mention. First of all is color. I didn't talk about the color profile or how the lenses perform for a few reasons. As I mentioned, I'm using what is known as the worst lens for this camera, so that's not really a good place to start, and until I get my other lens fixed, I don't really want to judge it just off of that. And then secondly, if you'll notice, about halfway through, the colors on the photos that I took start to get a little bit wonky, and you'll notice like some color distortion going on. The first half, there's one of me in the coffee shop, and another one of a guy in a coffee shop, some of Matt outside as we're trying to figure out how this camera works and things like that. And the colors aren't too bad there. But the second half, if you'll notice, it starts to get a little bit bluish on one end and then yellowish on the other, and like green in the middle. What happened was I messed up on my chemicals. I didn't write down properly how many rolls I'd used, how long I'd had the chemicals, so it ended up kind of messing up that roll some because I should have thrown out those chemicals and got a new batch. So I just want to let you know that it's not a camera issue, it's a user issue. That means me. Secondly, I know I talk about how much I really enjoy using this camera and how great it is, which is all true, but I will also say that this is definitely not a beginner or intro camera. Yes, it functions pretty much just about the same as any other film camera with some minor tweaks and things like that, but it's not something you can just pick up and jump right into. You kind of have to do your research and kind of fiddle around with it and see how it works. If you end up finding one for a great deal, definitely buy it. If you don't use it, you can always resell it, probably get your money out of it, or you can learn how to use it down the road. If you are just starting out with film and trying to get into it, I wouldn't recommend going straight to this, but definitely a great camera to have and invest in the future. So, back to the video. Another cool little perk to this camera is the lens hood. So you would take it and it mounts onto all of the lenses right here on the front. It looks really cool. It's a big solid block. It just screws on right like that. Now it gets interesting because you can then hit a notch here and it just pops right off. So if you wanted to take a shot or two without the lens hood, I guess theoretically you could just do that. But that's not the coolest part. This is one of your filters. I have red, green, and yellow. Also have not been able to play with them yet. But then you can just take this, and once you have that on there, you can just pop the lens hood right back on, and now your filter is inside of that. And then if you need to switch it, or you just want to take it out, you don't have to take off the lens hood. You can just pop it open and then pop the lens hood right back on. In conclusion, I don't see this as being maybe the best run and gun street photography camera. However, I do think it would lend itself very well to street photography portraits. If you just look at this, I mean, this is a talking piece. If someone sees this, I feel like they're gonna have more of an appreciation for what you're doing and just the time and the work that you're putting into creating something with this. And then with the large format you have available with this, as well as a smaller half frame of the 120, I think you can get a lot of different interesting looks. If I were you, I would invest in the Makina 3 or 4, something that has a little bit more versatility with the shutter speed, and then also gives you the flash sync, which I think would be cool for studio work. In conclusion, if you have the chance to get your hands on a Makina, don't hesitate, pull the trigger and make sure you grab it. It's gonna be a fun camera. It's gonna give you both a challenge, and then it's also gonna be very rewarding as well. So I hope you enjoyed this little video on the Makina IIS. If you have any questions or comments or things like that, make sure you leave those down below. Be sure to subscribe so you can see future videos where I do some black and white with this and just kind of put it through some different formats, maybe with the crop frame and things like that. Other than that, I will see you in the next video.